and it's got different modules, you know, women and men, and different levels. They also have the mental health unit there, but they have different levels. They even have the work furlough, which means they leave in the morning and come back in the afternoon. But having said that, how are we going to take something like this and expand it? And how do we deal with not in my backyard? Or how do we deal with getting some, what would we call them, like a home with 6, you know, like a, what do they call it?
Like
a community base. Could we expand this as community-based programs? I think we could, but how do we do this? I mean, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, actually, see, that was one of the components that was lost, like, because I came from Kulani, which was the last stop for the inmates where they needed to do a lot of their programs. So they did the sex offenders program, the substance abuse programs, but when they got out, there was no aftercare program. So that was also needed, but luckily that we have Francis Malani in my community who has some of these halfway houses that he have been taking care of the men, and they're called the men of Pa'a. So they get to meet in groups and support each other, especially when they feel like they're falling out and they need help.
Yes.
So that was part that was missing in the public safety programs because they didn't have the aftercare. But now we have not bad amounts that have been created to help these individuals.
But is the aftercare really driven by the Department of Public Safety, or is it really the Department of Human Services? I mean, a whole different branch of government that looks more at community, you know, issues of living in a community and housing. And do you know where?
I think most of them are nonprofits, and they're kind of like driven by the people themselves because they want the people to be successful and be productive in the community, and instead of going back to their old lifestyle.
Okay, but on the Big Island, they were trying to do a pilot program calling Coming Home.
Yes.
So what's the difference? Is that similar? Or?
I think Coming Home, you're still part of the system, and like the other program I was talking about, you're out of the system. Okay. So there's a big difference. Yeah, but those are the kind of programs that there's really strong need for all communities.
Yes.
Yes, because we all have to be working as a team to make the person become a better person. Because once you put a person in prison, you're not only talking about that one singular person, you're talking about the whole family complex. Yes. It involves the children, it involves their spouses or their loved ones, the mother, the father. Yes. Because once you lock up somebody, they're all incarcerated. Yep. It's not only the individual. And this is something that we need to educate other people about.
Yes.
That it's our problem and it's not just their problem.
Yes.
You know, in addressing the NIMBY issue, that's really interesting. Almost every family in Hawaii has been touched by incarceration in some way, either their own family or they know somebody or, you know, I mean, or they work in the system. I mean, almost everybody has. I mean, I cannot believe it. I go into a room with people I don't know, and they find out that I'm a justice advocate, and all of a sudden people start coming and telling me their stories. So, I mean, people, it's amazing. It's, you know, you want to say, well, it's only those people. Well, no, it's just about everybody in prison. Yeah. So, you know, it's really important. And I think if we actually, my role is really to educate the community, to say everybody in prison is part of our community. And how do we help people be successful in the community? So I go into the prisons and I say to the guys, we need you. We need you. The community needs lots of help, and we need you, and you're just, you know, here. So we want you to come out, be successful, and help us build a stronger community. We want to help our kids avoid the path that you were on, and your story is really valuable. When they go into schools, the kids are just wrapped, right? They're just enwrapped with what the guys have to say. And to me, that is really important because it heals the guys and it opens the eyes of the children and the hearts of the adults. So I think it's all about communication and education. And that's my goal.
Whoa.
To create a kinder and
Yes.
gentler community.
Yes, and actually, when you were talking, do you know what really jumped out to me is this discussion about gangs that I've been hearing here at the state legislature this year, that a lot of people are concerned that there is a growth in gangs. Have you heard
In
anything
prison?
about that?
Actually, the gangs actually stemmed when we started to send our inmates to the mainland. And that's where they formed their gangs, because they had their own self-identity and that they had to fend for themselves, and they couldn't identify with the other people because it wasn't part of their culture. So all of our Hawaii, inmates became very close and formed their own. It was just for their own protection. And actually, when these inmates come back to the islands, sometimes you have to transition them back, that there's no need and no longer need to be in a gang. And that's been one of the problems in public safety.
Yes.
Do they have any good programs on this?
Well, they try to train some people to be specialized in gangs operations, but you'll always have the ones falling through the cracks. I mean, if you don't catch them early, and if you don't have, a one-to-one talk with them on an individualized basis, so you can find out what they're thinking and why they're feeling that way. So, that's another program, they really need to instill back, so that we can bring them back to where they're originally from.
Yes.
Whoa, that sounds like a lot of work. And I know, there's a lot of programs. So because of the time, we got about 5 minutes to talk a little more. I thought briefly it'd be maybe interesting to who's listening today to hear about some of the programs that all of us have heard here at the legislature, and me as former chair and you now as chair, and that is like the SKIP program, which is the Children of Incarcerated Program,
Yes.
Restorative
Yes.
Circles.
Yes.
Okay, so I talk a little bit about the type of program. I think they're fabulous. They're
Yes.
they're
Yeah.
really
And they work.
new and they're good
They work,
ideas. They're
yes.
good ideas. So
Yeah.
who wants to take up SKIP?
You can take up skip.
Well, SKIP is the Supporting Keiki of Incarcerated Parents program. And what it is, it started at the women's prison. Well, actually, it started at Waiava, and now it's at the women's prison too. And what it is, it was started by a whole hui of child advocacy organizations led by Good Beginnings Alliance. But Keiki Oka'aina is part of that. And it basically teaches inmates how to play with their children. Play is the first way a child learns. And many people who are in prison really don't know how to be parents. And this program helps them figure out how to deal with their children. So a child comes in, I think it's for children only under like 4 or something. It's young children.
Age.
And the mom or the caregiver brings the child to the prison, and they have a separate place where the inmates then meet with the child. And it's a bunch of inmates, and they have toys and things in there. And to see these big men like playing with their little kids is just so moving, because in many cases it might be the first time that that he's actually looked at his child to, instead of discipline, but to play with him. And it's really wonderful. It's enhanced prison management, because the men are very motivated. Children are a great motivation. And for women, children are their greatest motivation, and when they know that they're not going to be able to see their kids, they don't do anything that could get them a write-up to avoid the visit. So that's a great program. And we want people to come out and be good parents, and we also want children to know their parents. It's really difficult, especially since we're sending more than half our prison population to the continent. Kids like to say goodnight to mommy and daddy, and phone calls are really expensive.
Yes.
And it's very hard for a child to understand why daddy's not coming home, why mommy's not coming home.
Okay, so not to cut you off, but I wanted you to say a few words about Restorative Circles.
On Restorative Circles, that's a program where the family meets together, and then they have interactions, and then at least they can share their moments together, and also, just feel like a family again, ohana, instead of being separated. And that brings people closer, and once they know that, that there's love there, I mean, that's one of the goals, to always have love, because that's one of the things that keeps us going.
Yes.
Yes. So, once you instill that in people, then actually the child can grow up being loving and with the parent itself. So it's just a wonderful program.
Kind of like
It's
Ho'oponopono,
kind of
yeah?
like Ho'oponopono, yes.
Very similar. Yeah, and a study just came out in last July from the University of Cambridge in England, saying restorative justice actually reduces crime by 27%. And we know that the Restorative Circle project that we do in the Hawaii prisons is a project that is a reentry strategy. So it's a 3-hour process. The first hour and a half is basically restorative justice. What was the harm? Who was harmed? How were they harmed? How can you, the person who caused the harm, repair that harm? So the inmate actually drives that program. And the people around the circle are the caseworker, the victims, who almost in all cases are the families first, and almost, I would say 99% of the cases are all about crystal methamphetamine. That's why people are in prison. So of course, what's happened with the families is robberies, things like that.
Yes. Well, we're getting at the end of the show, so I have to ask, now what?
Well, now what? I guess we're going to have to keep on working on the bills that are surviving.
That's right, and we
Yes.
do. And I know that you really feel passionately about it, and I want to thank you for the leadership, because as we know here at the state capitol, with the focus and the tenacity is where you make progress here. And
Yes.
you just can't hit and miss. Sometimes it takes time and education. So
Yes.
Thank you. Any
Thank
closing
you.
comments?
Well, I just wanted to say, having Rep Hanohano as the chair of public safety, who has this, institutional knowledge, has been a great boon.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
representatives.
you, Representative.
You're welcome. All right, and thanks for being with us. Aloha.
Aloha.